Oh, good morning. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'd like to go ahead and welcome all of our participants and thank you all for joining today. So my name is Sarah Ishag, and I will be one of the moderators along with the CEO of WallStreet Research, Alan Stone. As many of you may be familiar with the company, WallStreet Research is a 35-year-old research and investor relations consulting firm. And today we are presenting our client company, Global Cannabis Applications Corp., which is traded on the OTC, and the Citizen Green Efixi, which is a technological platform. The company is positioned as a global leader in designing and developing SaaS licensing, as well as acquiring innovative data technologies for the medical cannabis industry. The Citizen Green and Efixi platforms are the world's first end-to-end, from patient to regulator, medical cannabis data solutions, which you'll hear a lot more about that shortly. So today we will have the CEO Bradley Moore along with Hanan Gobendorf present the firm. And following the presentation, Alan will present a series of questions prior to opening up the Q&A session, which I will be moderating as well. So to all of our participants, if you have any questions, please feel free to add those in the chat box, and we will attempt to get through as many as possible prior to the end of the call. Also, we will be sending follow-up emails directly following the webinar. So for those of you who may have serious inquiries regarding the offering, you may be in touch with the team. And with that being said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Alan Stone so we can get started.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, and welcome everybody to the WallStreet Research virtual webinar series. And we're very pleased today to have Global Cannabis Applications Corp. As our featured speaker. And we've got Bradley Moore, who's the Chief Executive Officer, and Hanan Gelbendorf, who's the Chief Marketing Officer, joining us on the call today. And the company trades on the CSE, which is the Canadian Securities Exchange, where it's listed there under the symbol APP. And it's currently trading in Canada at about roughly in and around 14 cents, and it's trading in the United States on the OTC market, on the pink OTC pink at 19 cents, and fairly actively trading, average volume about 465,000 shares in the United States, and a $31.6 million market cap in the U.S. based on today's price, and that's from Yahoo, at least Yahoo data. And just a few words about WallStreet Research for those of you who are new to our webinar series today. WallStreet Research is a 40-year-old independent research firm. We have offices in New York City and Los Angeles and Palm Beach, Florida. We've been publishing and distributing research on small cap and micro cap companies for 40 years now. We have a global following, US, Canada, Europe, Asia, and South America. We're ranked number one on all the search engines, Google, Yahoo, and Bing. We have a number of very talented analysts in a wide range of industries, including healthcare, medical device, technology, cannabis, and many other industries. And our website is WallStreet Research, wallstreetresearch.org. And we post, when we do a report on a company, we post it up on our website and send it to our shareholders. So anyone who'd like to get our research as it's published, I'd encourage them to go on our homepage and just enter your email, and that way you'll get the reports automatically as they're published, and also get notifications of other events that we have coming up. So at this point, as I mentioned, the company is got some very unique, interesting technology, which kind of basically combines blockchain, artificial intelligence, algorithms through their app and through their software, SaaS software. And the the company will be going into that in depth during the presentation. So I think at this point, I will turn it over to Bradley Moore, the CEO, and we'll commence the presentation. All right. Let's see. Basically. Yeah, you can get started, Brad.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us. I think we got a little bit of feedback here. I don't know where that's coming from.
Yeah, we can get going. Some people will filter in as we get going, but we've got about close to 70 people right now.
Okay. So first of all, thanks everyone who's joining us. I appreciate your time. Alan, thank you. Sarah, thank you for the introduction. Mark, nice to meet you the first time. And to Hanan, my CMO, hiding in the dark there in Israel, happy Independence Day. Look, we're excited to be here. You know, Global Cannabis Applications Corp. And just a slight correction, because this is an important part. We do trade on the CSE APP, but we're not trading at 14.5 cents. We're trading at 24.5 cents currently. So, because you made me, I got word I had to go check Yahoo Finance while you were saying that number. So probably around 19.5 cents Canadian. But yeah, we are trading. We have had an incredible growth story over the last 7 months, and we're here to tell you a little bit about why that growth is happening in the company. So if we could get the presentation started, I think would be a good place for us. Thank you, Mark. All right, so let's jump into the next slide and get to some of the forward-looking statements. These are the things I'll talk about. If I haven't, it's very simple, guys. If I haven't announced it, I won't say it. It's that simple. And so there's certain things I'm going to talk to you about today. You'll actually see in the presentation, and you'll see some really kind of like almost like text chat box there in yellow. I'll talk about those, but if it's not out there, I'm not talking about it, right? Unless it's announced by the company. And, you know, that's obviously for everybody's best interest, but there's a lot to talk about as is. And so why don't we jump right into it? So the next slide. So I think one of the things that gets overlooked, and I'm going to take it back a few years to a conversation that I had with somebody when I was at a trade show. I believe it was in London, England. And in one side of the room, there was a whole bunch of people from growers and a lot of Canadian companies in there. I think we all probably know who they are. And they were talking about their yields of seeds in the ground and about their THC levels and their CBD. And it was really about how much could they pump out of the ground, right? And at that time, I mean, it was a very relevant conversation. And then in the other group, in a side room, were people with actual cannabis patients. And there was a lady, she was originally from Canada, she was Greek heritage, so she was living in Greece, and she was a patient advocacy. And she looked at me and she said, you know, I'm never coming back to these things again. I said, we're over here talking about human beings, and they're talking about yields. You know, my response to her, in my comment to her, I go, but if you don't, who's going to? And that stuck with me, because what we've seen is if we actually want to gonna use the term medical, we need data. And I think we can all agree, just alone from the argument of things that happened in COVID, data is the answer. And so globally, there's been a huge drive in a perspective of pushing towards getting more data, to the point that in January, as you'll see under the press release symbol, we actually signed before we'd gone live, but before we were really out there, we were approached by a data brokerage company who represents some really major players, all the way from some of the big accounting firms to major pharmaceutical firms that wanted to lock us up with a data contract and pay, you know, it's interesting, and pay very well for that data that we would be accruing through our system. And you'll see in a few minutes how we go about doing that. And I think one thing that's really important, the conversation that I had with this guy at the beginning of, let's say, well, probably about a third of the way through 2020, was about growing. And then very quickly, all on his own, it shifted to Efixii. what happens to a human being at a given point in time when they put something medical, cannabis in their body under a set of circumstances to treat a specific ailment, right? And those are almost two verbatim his words. And if you even look back at our company back to 2018, you'll actually see that's been our motto. That's actually our tagline. When we sit down as a company and we look at what we're going to use to try to crack the data nut, right, and to the problem that we're solving, it's that problem. So next slide. So what have we seen as an example? I think, as it, when you look at that example of Greece, and then you look at the example of, people, growers, something came to light recently in Canada. And for our American viewers, if you never saw that, it's quite interesting. It was from Bloomberg. It said that Health Canada probing cannabis labeling amid canopy growth potency complaints. That's huge. Now, really, if you read the article and you get a chance to go through with it, what you're going to see is that a competitor came out and said, there seems to be, like an average a potency on the THC component. And when you're talking recreational, it's like anything. The more you put it in the body, the more your body wants it. So they were basically saying that these guys are, saying that everything is on average 20%. And they said, theoretically, that's just impossible to get to. Now, I want to say, okay, so if that's for recreational, it's fine, but let's put it into the medical spectrum. And I think this is very interesting, because if you're ingesting something into your body, to go back to that, what happens to your body when you treat this with that, you can have devastating effects. And, one of the things I'll share, I think does, and I think that this is a very irrelevant thing, whereas, not yet, please. Whereas I became, I used to use the example about the mom living in the suburbs with her son who has epilepsy. Could you imagine giving somebody too much THC to help control their epilepsy? Because you did all this research and you thought you're doing the right thing, and on a personal level, last September, after a common test, I was diagnosed with a form of colon cancer. And over a 5-week period, I underwent last year, while the company was growing, I underwent a 27 chemo treatments, and I underwent 25 radiation treatments. To be honestly with you, I was a mess. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever gone through, but it was to be curative. And when I talked to the cancer clinic, I said, my laundry list of medications besides the chemo was huge. And I go, I'm putting all this stuff in. I'm a person, as you'll see in my demo, I'm a person, I eat Brussels sprouts and I worry about my health because I'm older, I'm 55, I'm beaten up from the army, I'm beaten up from rugby, and it's important to me. And all they could say is, we don't know what to tell you, Brad. And then I said, as a person that was sick, I go, I can't take a chance with my health. And so I went down and did what they told me to do, because I couldn't imagine, for what I was dealing with burns and sickness, of ingesting something that would potentially make me feel worse at that point in time. And so that's what this is about. It's about a person, and it's about a grower, a cultivator that wants to sell something. And our system, and you'll see that in a minute, makes, through the use of the immutable blockchain, and we're going to describe what that means in this next slide coming up in 1 second. You're going to actually see how we do that. My point is, I want you to look at this video, the next 3 minutes of it, and you will then see how it would have been virtually impossible for this situation to arise in Canada if people were using our system. So if we could jump into the next slide and play the video, that'd be great.
Powered by TraceLocker, Citizen Green Ifixi is the world's first blockchain-powered RegTech compliant solution that enables a fast, agile registration of medical cannabis and CBD products. Simple, secure, and intuitive, Ifixi was designed with leading medical cannabis and CBD cultivators from Israel, Canada, and Switzerland, and was built to align with their cultivation, distribution, and compliance processes. Let's follow the journey of our favorite medical cannabis grower, Susan, as she uses Ifixi to help her successfully grow, test, and ship her products to market. Ifixi allows growers like Susan to record each of the critical steps involved in cultivating and distributing. At the heart of Efixii lays a powerful blockchain back office that ensures every piece of information is recorded, secured, and associated with a verified user, a recording process called attestation. Each user profile is created by establishing a blockchain e-wallet on their smartphone through the TraceLocker KYC app that verifies a person's identity during registration. All personal contact information, including photo ID, is validated according to local regulations and in compliance with international AML standards. Only verified users may record events. Using her smartphone's Face ID, Susan enters cannabis event details that are immutably notarized on a blockchain. Ifixi has made the process seamless so that every step of Susan's cannabis product journey can be thoroughly verified by regulators, customs officials, and consumers. Excited to get started, Susan uses the Efixi app to set up her company's profile, including logo and grow location. Next, she defines the base mother plant for each product grow, including the genome and seed, as she records all relevant information related to the mother plant's life cycle. Susan's farm has multiple large greenhouses with separate grow zones. Susan is ready to start growing a cannabis batch. All the steps from taking cuttings, taking pictures, noting the growing zone, watering times, pesticide use, and lighting can all be logged using the app, right up to harvesting. With her batch ready for sale, Susan takes that next step, product testing by a lab. She creates a lab profile that includes the lab name, address, and the weight of the test sample. Then she takes a photograph of the shipping label. When the lab verifies potency and terpene analysis, Susan takes a picture of the lab report, and now this entire cannabis batch is shown to be legally compliant and ready to be packaged and sent to the market. Ifixi continues to help Susan in her business's next phase, getting her cannabis product to a distributor or retailer. Using the app's proprietary process management, Susan creates a unique QR code for her shipment called a digital twin. The shipper puts the QR code onto the shipment, so when a customs agent scans her Ifixi QR code, a web page opens that provides all the relevant information about Susan's shipment. All the attested events entered by Susan and her team are viewable through a QR code scan. Because this information is tamper-proof and attested to by a natural entity, the agent is happy to authorize the shipment for entry, and soon Susan's products are ready for sale. Finally, the distributor that receives Susan's shipment scans the QR code using his app, thus making the digital twin QR code as delivered, thereby preventing the cloning of such valuable QR codes by potential bad actors. From cultivation to retail, only Efixi's unique application of advanced RegTech technology guarantees consumers that Susan's products are compliant and are the right choice for them.
Amazing. Next slide. Thank you. So that was, hopefully everybody saw from that example why that issue in Canada wouldn't happen. And one of the things that's really kind of incredible with this is, as that product, the simple ability to like go to the simple ability to like take your smartphone or anybody in the supply chain or the regulatory chain or a medical professional, and to see every component. So if you get a lab test and it says it has this amount of THC or this amount of CBD, or as we're working with our partners in Israel and in Canada with Purity IQ, even more dynamic testing, what it comes out on that label at the end, there's complete chain all the way through. So the opportunity here is it just never has to happen. And once again, when you look at somebody like myself and who walked into the cancer clinic saying I don't know, and then I went into a dispensary, and I had no offense to them, but I had a 19-year-old trying to tell me what I should take. That just wasn't okay. It didn't jive with me. So the ability to have, and I don't think anybody can see this because the demo's up, but have an example of a product, and on that product is a QR code that I could scan that, find out everything I needed to know. And see, the thing is that that's the power of the immutable blockchain. That the ability to put those attestations on is incredible. So over the last 5 years, we put a $6.5 million investment into this. And the result is, we started off in last September with a $3 million company, and we've grown to a $42.2 million company kind of as of today's market price. When you take a look at what we've done and who's using it, we signed our partners in Bless. Well, first and foremost, I think we should talk a little bit about how we build everything on Ethereum 2.0. Once again, the blockchain is public. The data, the attestations we put on them, we own that. And that's the power of what we're doing. And that comes down a little bit more when we'll see about the revenue model. But these interlocking technologies, just to explain to you, these have been what it's been able to, drive these last 3 big sales deals we've been doing. So let's hop into the next slide. So it's funny to me, and I think that maybe because cannabis was so much in the toilet in 2019, it kind of went a little bit under the radar, that we actually filed a patent, and it's a patent pending because it's very evolutionary, in the sense of, like all patents, you have to stay on them and you keep them going and developing. And it was called as Cannabis on the Blockchain. And so the patent is defined as the process for determining the average efficacy of a consumed gram of medical cannabis or CBD for the treatment of a specific ailment through the use of artificial intelligence algorithm, which is then stored on an immutable blockchain with the specific growing data of that ground. That's a very big statement. And you know what? Honestly, when I filed it, I thought we were going to be like trying to wade through minutia of other patents, and there was none. And so what's really big about that is we look, there's nothing cutting edge about blockchain anymore to a certain extent. There's nothing cutting edge about mobile apps for sure. There's nothing really to a certain extent about a lot of the algorithms that are out there. But when you put it into a process, you get something very interesting. And, I want to kind of, when we think about decentralized finance, what are we really saying? What we're saying is that, we have a piece of technology through the use of the blockchain that allows for a mechanism for people to do a form of non-regulated, non-banking transactions, financial transactions with each other. And obviously, for the regulators, that throws them into a dizzy because all the rules are written around banks. Now, that's a really good example of the power of the blockchain. We've all seen that, and we see that as it pertains to crypto and how that plays itself out, the utilization of blockchain. Why don't you take the inverse of that? Think about that gap, that lack of data and that gap in data, and then take a good, strong idea of, well, if there was, looking at this infinity loop, if there was a lack of data, well, what if we could provide that data by using the blockchain? What would a regulator actually be able to do then if thinking the most important thing at the end of this is the consumer, not the yields out of the ground? Conversation with the lady from Greece, take a look at the growth all the way through, going through, picking up on the right-hand side of the infinity loop, the consumer inputs per gram growing, and then feeding that all the way back to everybody in the supply chain. Data point, data point, data point, data point, data point. And then, then talking, when we talk about machine learning, and, I've been accused of using the term AI machine learning, probably a little bit more liberally than I should. The construct is, if I can layer enough Brads of the world in, dealing with treating their specific ailment related to their cancer, not solving cancer, but their ailment related to their cancer, at a given point under a set of circumstances, if I can layer that in, well, what if I can come up with an average efficacy? Something that says this works 8 out of 10 times. Now, that's incredible, because now we're starting to talk about personalized medicine using big data. So once again, it's the construct of the blockchain. And this is where the term immutable is so important. It can't be broken without people knowing it's been broken. So, I think we should move to the next slide, because this will help me lead into this a little bit. when we take a look at what we've done, when we launched it and into our first deals that we were used in Israel for our cultivator bless. See, in Israel, what happened in Canada would never fly. You just wouldn't get away with it. But the problem is it's so restricted in the regulatory framework. There's no scale. The scale is constrictive to the grower. And so I think the idea, once again, with the argument is that what if we can provide the scale using the technology? So through the simple use of a QR code to look at the attestations of that information, of the data stored onto the blockchain, it's incredible. And GCAC owns those attestations. For the, look, we're looking at putting 34 million grams of growing and efficacy data onto our blockchain, into this year. Well, I should say signing that up and over the course of this, year and next year. And then another 98 million. That's literally billions upon billions of data points. The people that want to pay for that, if you break it down onto a per gram basis, even though we charge on a QR code, even if you work it on a per gram, we're looking at 20 cents Canadian. If you're looking at an $8 product, Canadian product, that's a 2.5% uplift. If you're looking at a European product going into the EU, you're looking at a $15 product. You're looking, I think it's a 1.3% uplift. And the cultivator doesn't bear all that. It's all the way through the supply chain. Conversely, as that information gets stored, data guys want to pay us on average 18 cents a gram. Now that can be higher, it can be lower. So if I'm working with a grower that's kind of, building something on the less than preferred growing environment in South Africa versus a very well-established grower, whether it's in Israel or Malta or Canada, that will drive a higher price point. So big technology, big revenue. We can all appreciate QR codes. If you've got your phone out, scan that and you'll get an example of what people actually see on the QR code. Next slide. So our go-to-market strategy. So, one thing that I learned is that Kodak, good input gives you good output. The good input is the technology. The good output is how it adapts to all the markets globally. With literally, and that's, I think, to the statement of the power of the blockchain. And, once again, I'll encourage everybody, instead of trying to figure it out, just look at decentralized finance and say, that's what it does when there's a lot of regulations don't mean a lot. Well, when there's a lack of regulations and it's all over the map, as you can see, it's different Canada, where it's different United States, it's different where it's in Europe, it's different where it's in in Israel or versus South America and Africa. Everybody's at a different level, the regulators and their understanding. So what we've done is we've put together go-to-market strategies for each one of these 4 regional initiatives. And, very interesting thing that we did is understanding that in Canada, it's very entrenched in the way it's done. There's okay, we now have recreational, which means all those guys saying it used to be medical, it's now in the rec market, but for the medical people, once again, can they see me, Ellen, or is it just a PowerPoint? They can see me? Oh, okay. So, when I show you this, and if I go and I buy that from a dispensary, right? I walk in and thanks, Mike Arsenal told me to see me. And then on the other side, I go buy it through and I get Manulife to pay for it. My private health insurer to pay for it, give me $500 a year. What's the difference? What is the difference between the two? There's no long tail data. And here's it. Now, I've brought all my props for everybody today. If you do a clinical study, okay, now I love Brussels sprouts, they're good for you, sorry. But if you do a clinical study, you test that Brussels sprout. And you say, this is good for this 8 out of 10 times. And, once again, it's clinical studies around cannabis are interesting because what are we going to do? You're going to give me some cannabis, and then what am I going to actually eat a Brussels sprout? It's an alternative. So it's an interesting argument. I won't get into it. But at the end of the day, because it's a plant and it changes, who says the next one grown out of the ground is the same as this one? It's unique. And see, that's where you start to understand if we can track and trace. And if you take a look at it, what we know about the molecules, we know what all the molecules are, but if you know what 30% of them do to the human body, but you don't know what the other 70% necessarily impact, but you know that what they do, but you know that they impact, then one of the most important things that happens out of this whole thing is you get this idea of we need to record everything. We need to create better start points and framing all the way along. And so what we've done is taking that approach, realizing what was happening in Canada, we said, you know what, we're going to get a non-possession health selling license. Yeah, we'll make some money on the upsell of, somebody's cannabis. I said, but most importantly, what we're doing is we're launching a portal. Now, if you remember way back 2018, we had our retail to consumer system called Prescripti. Well, we've reinvented that, we revigorized that, and we're turning it into a platform where guys who have cancer can go in, instead of trying to sit down and do 80 hours of homework and make it all make sense. They'll be able to go in and use some smart technologies to start to feed them better information points and understand more. The objective is as we're waiting for our license to come through, by the time it's all said and done, guys, our Canadian patients are only going to want to talk to cultivators that have fat on it, because they want to know. And if it is what you say it is, then you should wholeheartedly embrace that, because at least then you can start to market appropriately. That's our approach in Canada. I think once again, when we look at, it's not about whether Canopy is or isn't done with their accusers, because that's to be determined. It's more about the industry as a whole, right? That approach applies down in the United States, taking that Reddit style prescriptive consumer, educating people and blowing them up, and basically a pull through strategy with the consumer is a great place. And we're looking at it at a state by state level, because right now, some places you can do some things you can't. A lot of states are moving towards just recreational. Look, if you're going to tell me, okay, for our American viewers, can you imagine what that would play on an insurance premium, what your copay would be? I'm going to pay for something that you just get to put into your body. See, if I give you medicine, I know what it took to make that medicine. Therefore, I can adjust the premium, correct? If I'm going to turn around and say, okay, I'll cover all your X amount of your cannabis, and I don't know that you're going to be doing the, essentially have a seizure and doing the chicken on the floor, that's tough. And so we want to, once again, provide data points that apply regulatory guidance. And we're working at many different levels, the government levels, and many different places to sing that message and get it through. Israel's kind of an easy one, honestly, in the sense that they get it. Like their whole thing on there, if you move the compliance side apart, then it's just about costs and sales for them, because the market's kind of defined. The whole idea is what Bless did is they used it to reduce compliance costs. If you look at our friends in CBD AgroCasa, the largest CBD producer, they were all like, we want, if we're going to tell somebody that this is something and they think cannabis, they think CBD is cannabis and it's confused, we actually want them to know what they're getting, what they're putting in their body, how it's manufactured through the simple scan of the QR code. I mean, that is a massive thing. For them, it's about increasing sales. So if you're on the right side of doing the right things about compliance anyways, and you're meeting all the rules, you should tell people. That's what this is about. You should tell them. And, when you take a look at our recent press release from yesterday, I mean, Herb Industries is an incredible operation and that working on in Malta. And even though they're evolving what they're going to do next year, and if you look at the group of companies that we've joined, it's like we're one of many technology companies. They've got this to the point that they get a 9.5, they get 9.5 times more plants per 1,000 square meters. And that's a foothold into Fortress Europe, where very much like the United States, there's a lot of different engaged, disparaging rules. So we see that as an incredible opportunity. We're really excited. They're projected to do, they have to do it. They're projected to do 44 million grams next year. If we're making 38 cents, a gram, I think you can do the math, right? And so, that in theory, that would be half of my whole nut next year for grams under contract. Working with our Israeli partners, we see an opportunity in South America and South Africa. In a franchise model, I like this. These guys have great costs of production, but there's a lot of open and looseness around things. They need guidance. They need proper genetics. They need a lot of different things. A lot of things that are happening in Malta they could use that. So we're looking very strongly at how would we create a franchise model and how the company could benefit from that. And just basically, once again, getting more people to use the technology, more cultivators use the technology, will drive to more consumers growing. And I got to say this, it's not about the 1% of 1% of people who use it. It's about growing it from 1% of 1% to 2% of 1%, 3% of 1%, 4%. And we have to ask ourselves, why haven't that done it? And I think, the mom in the suburbs and myself, I'm a good example about you just don't take chances. You're going to say it's truly medical. Let's at least start a conversation, a data-driven conversation. Next slide. All right. So, I'm always big. I should probably adjust this one because the market is always nice and volatile. I like to call it March Madness, and it's not for you basketball fans. It was more about what happened in technology stocks. But I love graphs and I love data and I love things that kind of match upward curves. As you can say, we've had a good run on the right side. We still continue to hold or consolidated well from my perspective. And I think one thing is that, look, as we grow and we're signing these deals, let's not do one step forward, one step sideways, half a step back. Look, we've been a startup, but we're not a startup anymore. We have contracts and we have cash coming in. Is it a little? 100%, and all businesses start off that way, but we're a functioning business now. And so we're committed to the cleanup of our balance sheet. And so one of the things that we've done, and you have to do your homework, track all the way back, but we did an enforcement of security for a delinquent $5 million debt owed that was represented in shares out, and those are right in the process of being returned to Treasury now. That's incredible. That's a 7% of the float is being returned to the Treasury. How the market reflects on that, that's the market's job. My job is to say, we are cleaning the balance sheet up so every net new dollar revenue actually has the impact that it should have. Next slide. So, you know what? I got to go back and check with these guys to make sure they're still pretty bullish on us. But as of the beginning of March, they were pretty bullish on us. And, I think, as with a lot of these things, some are saying we should be at 53 cents. Stock Invest said we should be at the end of this 3-month period, which gives us another, I believe another month and a half to get there. We should be between 56 and 95, and our other friends have said we should be at 88%. So, I think, once again, if you truly understand the gap and you understand what's happening in cannabis, and why did it slow down, and you have growers with all this extra supply and people not buying it, and how we're doing market penetration, how many net new medical patients are we adding, right? And, where is the regulator? That's what we can solve. That's what the core underpinnings of the immutable blockchain. Our part of it is just to put that information on the blockchain, and that's what we've done. So next slide. For you folks in United States, we trade on the PINX, OTC, FUAPF. We were fully reporting on the QB at one point. We decided to pull back, I think about a year and a half ago. We are looking at that to make it easier for all you folks down there to kind of participate and work with us, because we're fully reporting on the CSE. It's quite an easy uplift. More to follow on that. For you Canadian shareholders, you know where to find us, how we're doing, and where to get your information from. So, and once again, for everybody, thanks for all your support. For what you're doing to allow us to go to work. We, as the management team, we locked down. We didn't take salaries. We locked down and we got to work and we put the pieces in play. And I gotta say, if you don't know who Abbey Technologies is, you need to find out. If you don't know who Brian Collins is, you need to find out. They are by far our largest shareholder, but most importantly, they're our shareholder because of what they brought to us as a technology partner. Their tech, our vision, has created this kind of incredible machine moving forward. And I don't know if this number holds true, but when you look at 1.5 cents to where we were, we were 1,933% uplift. So we're executing well. 13, next slide. as you've seen. Okay, so the team, who have we got on the team? Well, there's me, there's Hanan, you can see, hanging out in the dark. There's Alexander Hamel is for, Alex has been I love this guy as my CFO. He's been a CEO, right? He has an advanced degree in mathematics. So when it comes, and he understands compliance and making sure we do all the right things and protecting the company. Incredible person. Adolfo Gonzalez, who's been a huge medical cannabis advocate and a bug in our ear about how to actually work with patients and what that means and why we need to put our mind there versus trying to get caught up in that excitement about growing things. Nadav Segal is a huge part of our team out of Israel. For if you don't really understand medical cannabis, it's actually in Israel, it's older in the Canadian market. What they do over there, it's kind of unseen. And it just, it's almost to the point where I went over there and I said, how do I commercialize this? Like, this is a good system. And then to the chairman of our board, Jeff Hazlitt, for you guys who recognize his name, probably from New York, Jeff's been on Bloomberg. He was the chief marketing officer of Kodak globally. And if you're a business owner, you should think about his Hero Club. It's a great way through the C-suite networks to get engaged. Also, a big shout out to our partners over at Tallgrass PR, who have been part of this, getting these things together, working with Anon and the rest of the people on our team. So next slide. All right. So we are right now, like I said, here's some facts about us. We've got offices in Israel. We've got satellite offices in Lithuania, just so we have that EU foothold as we move forward. We've got good trading volume. We have the solution. I think one of the biggest things, and you'll see this as we go into like what we're offering now to to accredited investors, everything is about driving revenue. Every buck in is designed to get a buck out in revenue. So some facts and information about our capitalization structure are available on our deck. You can get from us if you don't have it already. Next slide. And there you go. That's execution. That's like, if I believe the math works out right, it's execution every 2 weeks, right? And meaningful execution. And so we will continue to do things as you saw yesterday. Look, I would rather work with a bunch of startup cultivators that are getting their feet, wanting to do the right things, than a cultivator who says, yeah, you know what? I just care about getting product out of the ground and that it doesn't have mold on it. That's a big statement. Apologize if I'll do the Canadian thing. Apologize if I've offended anybody. But I think the most important thing for you to understand is we have to think about that consumer. And then most importantly, once you're thinking about it, we can help you with that. So at that point, I'm done. Thank you, everybody. I'm willing to, I can see we got lots of questions down in the chat. I think we have some canned ones. But yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Bradley. Excellent presentation. Really tremendous overview and tremendous progress with the execution there, particularly, some of the big press releases with booking significant revenue from yesterday's release and from about 10 days ago. So right. I'm going to try to breeze through some questions that I had, and then Sarah can take some questions from the audience. So, so please stay with us, everybody, and we will try to get through these questions. First of all, tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into the technology side of the cannabis industry, and just a little bit about the technology of the company.
Sure. So, yeah, so I've always been on the tech side of things. I mean, I was involved in an internet company, holy smokes, like 1999 when we were selling websites with, 28, 8K, and you sit in front of somebody, you watch the website load. I was like, it's got to be a lot. So technology's always been a big thing. how I got involved with this is I was actually running the Pubco when it was fundamental applications. You know, we had this cool student buy sell thing. We were gaining users. It was all good. And then Facebook Marketplace. And I said, okay, so that dance is done, right? But what was important, what was really got me involved is I had investments in cannabis growers. And I was like, you know, man, medicinal, medical, it's really hard to use that word medical when you've seen somebody with a green neon cross in front of their storefront, right? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, I'm all like, that's not medical. That's somebody's, you know, like that's, you know, I was like, okay, that doesn't fly. And it really, Alan, the short answer is I sat down with an FDA study and I looked at the gated cross and I said, where does it break? Where, if you're starting with this versus a formulation, where does it break? And I started identifying points. And what I knew is at the end, consumer efficacy and all the other stuff was very different, right? That was the answer, right? And we were able to work it backwards from there. And, you know, that's kind of how it got started. A lot of research, a lot of consulting, a lot of dealing with people in different companies listening, and then just locked my head, getting focused on the customer or the patient, working backwards from there.
Very interesting. Now, how did you acquire your core technology and software? Or how was it developed? And a little bit more about the patents that are covering that core technology.
Sure. So there's a couple of things, right? I would say there's like a core, thought IP, there's a lot to learn and digest. If this was an easy solvable product, somebody would just like kicked out a blockchain company and said, okay, this is the way you do it, right? And I'd seen things. We'd all heard of seed to sale, right? Track and trace, about criminality. But we knew it went way beyond there, right? It was all from being driven by the consumer. So if we'll break it into two chunks. In 2018, we went down to a script. We paid for it, bought a whole bunch of stuff, and we had that. And then in fast forward 2020, we engaged with Abby. In between that time, we saw what was working and where we needed to be. And it was funny, around that whole track to trace seed to sale part, we knew we had to incorporate that. But once we did it, we were able to kind of meet the requirements of this vision that we wrote in the patent. Like I said, the patent is a process patent. I want to be clear with everybody. We're constantly improving into it because those are very hard to defend. Okay, let's just be honest with it. But the output is what's important. And the output comes from a very specific workflow. So we own the rights to very specific, we own blockchain stuff. We, without kind of getting too far into different contracts, the app stuff we own, the things that we have the licenses on, exclusive licenses on things. So we have a series of kind of a combination of licenses and outright technologies we own. And then, honestly, a lot of mental IP that went into just figuring it out. Like I said, I could tell you this. I remember sitting down with the CEO of Weed Maps once, which was huge, right? Weed Maps was huge around that rec space. And he said, I've been trying to figure this out for 4 years. You guys went out and did it. Well, yeah, but it cost me $6.5 million to do, right? And a lot of time, 5 years of just working and getting it wrong to get it right. And now that's where we're at that point. So what we have today, we have what we own, what we've licensed, all together, that's encompassed within the patent.
Very, very good. Now, do you coordinate at all with like the regulators in the different markets that you're in order to kind of tap into what they're trying to achieve?
Well, if I truly answered that question, I have to be fully disclosed. So I'll put it this way, being able to work with a company like Les, and then they take it to the regulator and they get the regulator to sign off on it, that they can use it for their compliance, is huge. Like, I mean, this is the most strictly controlled, regulated market in the world. And they said, well, that's kind of, I don't even know what a good analogy for that would be, but that's a huge give. And then it's a matter of, it's stepping stones, Alan, right? So are we having some high level comments? You bet. is it just like, hey, you should all listen? Listen, if everybody's just all listening stuff, Canopy, that, that investigation when it happened. That's why I said the best press release that happened all year for us was that Bloomberg article about Health Canada and Canopy. I hate to say it, but it really just shows like the stuff doesn't happen on our watch.
Now, you've recently announced some very big contracts recently regarding your SaaS software and apps and with some very big customers. How do you go about the process of getting into these large companies and large farms, large cultivators to utilize your technology?
Yeah, so like I said, it's all relative. I'd rather work with, instead of banging my head against I don't want to say the establishment, that's not a great way to say it, but against people that figure like, listen, our job's to grow shit. Oops, I apologize. Our job's to grow stuff. Your job is to consume it. And what happens around that is not our job. So by working with the Blesses, as they move their production facilities forward and the herb industries per se on the medical cannabis side, there's a lot of planning and processing that goes into it. It's a very simple app to use. If you're asking like, how does it like actually incorporate? Well, you sign a contract with us. We do a KYC compliance. We have a certain amount of people in on those. And then it's literally as simple as like, okay, this one just came out of the ground. You take a photo or you upload the data that's associated and you attest it to the blockchain. Alan, it's so easy to use. It's so easy. And in large aspects, they're doing it anyways, but they're leaving out these large gaps of really important data, right? And so if I was going to talk to a Canopy or an Apria or whatever, the ease of use, I think, as you all saw in the system, how to use it. I mean, that's literally maybe I believe our training modules probably encompass a total of 5 hours of different application, different company uses. Very simple to use.
Now, you've given some guidance for potentially 40 million or thereabouts in revenue by the end of 2022. That's Canadian dollars, I guess. Can you elaborate on how you get there and what sort of like how do you get to that number? I know you got some big customers you could probably scale up with them and add others, and maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, what we don't one grower and they give us all their grams. While it would be great in terms of the revenue count, that's not, listen, as a cancer patient who's gone through it, who could have really used the benefits, some great data. I need to have a lot of input from a lot of cultivators with a lot of different consumers. That's my goal, right? And so to break the numbers down, we've looked that we're going to work with 22 cultivators this year on average, giving us 1.5 million grams out of their batches or their grows. Might be more, might be less. Either way, our target's 34 million grams under contract. What is 34 million grams? Well, if this is a gram of cannabis and whatever it took to get this into here and then get it into me, we're going to record all that. And then that's 20 cents a gram. The other side of that is the 18 cents on the data cells. So you got 38 cents times, per gram on average at 34 million grams. Now on the other side of that, so there's no let's just answer your question. In our pipeline, who are the people who are working there? There's no shortage of companies and conversations, right? There's just no shortage. Some guys are like, I'm interested. Some guys are not interested. Incredibly, something like Canopy happens, people get more interested because they could be doing all the right things. They should just never have to have that conversation. And if you look at 2022, it's like I said, I'd still like to stick to the 1.5 million grams per consumers and have to get whatever that number is, 45 or 44 new growers. Now, we might get half that number, Alan, just from, 44 million grams out of 98 million grams is, it's just about, our friends over Herb Industries gets the full throttle and gets those things out of the ground. That's half our nut. So all I know is we just need to have good sales conversations on a weekly basis with growers.
Now, I see that you recently announced an offering, non-brokered offering in Canada and US for, I believe it's $5 million in Canadian dollars.
Yeah.
For selling shares at 19.5 cents in the offering, plus a warrant, a 3-year warrant, as I understand, for at 26 cents. So that looks pretty attractive, given that your stock today is 25 cents. To be able to buy in at a significant discount there in the offering.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about this, and how would someone who's on the call today potentially subscribe to that?
For sure. Simple is there's rules we all got to play by in the Canadian space from the Canadian from the CSC. You need to be an accredited investor, and that's actually outlined in the subscription document. I said that the first point of contact is just email us at info@Cannabis Corp with your interest in the private placement. We obviously will connect with you, and I think this is important, very important thing. This company has been built on retail investors. I love this opportunity to have this and talk to those guys, right? Like the big houses have a lot of, there's some very big players from big houses that are personally in and behind us. But, this is, as the darlings have been the cultivators, and whether they are or not now, if this was the gold rush, those, the cultivators are the miners, but the guys who make the money are the picks and shovels guys. And that's what we're in, that industry. We're in that segment. We can help them facilitate to do their jobs. So it's those retail investors that have made this. And like I said, my hands are tied. You have to be accredited. But if you're accredited, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm going to turn the call over to Sarah. She's got a couple of questions. She's going to take some questions from the audience. I see there's quite a few people that have asked questions in the chat room. So, and we can keep going for a little bit. We don't have to cut it off. I know we're getting up to the hour soon, but we can keep it going an extra 10 or 15 minutes.
Usually I get shut down. I just got talked so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alan, and thank you, Bradley and Hanan, for the excellent presentation. We do have a lot of questions, so I'll try to, we can try to get through as many as possible. Okay. I'll at least cover one question from each of the participants, and hopefully, combine a few of them. So the first question we have here is, you mentioned a $6.5 million investment. I think can you talk a little bit about the distribution of this capital? Was it primarily invested into the technology platform or the patents?
Yeah, so it goes back to my earlier statement. I mean, there's as a pub, the nice thing is we're all fully reporting. You can go see how we spend our money. There's a lot of human capital costs that went into moving through these things. Like there was a lot of people, and then there's a lot of money spent on tech. If I had to give you the exact ratios, I would say I would have to actually turn around and hate to do this, but say you got to go look at the filings on it. But I'd probably say in that amount, we've got a significant amount in. You know what? I'll defer because I don't have that number in front of me. Say it's like 50% people, 50% tech. Point is that we own the tech that we need to know. We own the license we know to go forward, to execute, not be hampered moving forward. But it's definitely all out there.
Okay.
It's 5. You're asking me to look back 5 years, so I apologize for not having.
So there's a combination of factors involved, and you can always pull up the information. And then have a question from a few questions actually regarding the data. I'm sure you've talked a little bit about the data, but can you expand? This is from Jack. Can you expand on the information regarding the data collection? How and when is the data valuable? Also, who owns it, and who would have an interest in acquiring the data?
Okay, so great question. So first and foremost, a blockchain is nobody owns a public blockchain. That's the whole construct of it, right? That's the immutable part, and you have these mechanisms that are built in. We built ours on Ethereum 2.0. The attestation on there, we own, right? Like that's a fact that we own that. The value of it is relative to the value of the need for it. So for example, if a data buyer is a hedge fund manager, which we've talked to, and he's all wants to look at the construct of how his own yields are growing and what they're doing in THCs, he might be more interested in, depending on how the product's being used. Let's say he's all like, look, my stuff gets into a dispensary, it's medicinal per se, but at the end of the day, use it at your own risk, And so his value would be different than, for example, somebody saying, I want to buy data to look at it in terms of context about what the gap is between a regulatory requirement. I need to go present this to a regulator. And so they have a greater sense of value and patient efficacy, and the interesting construct around the patient efficacy part. And I saw one person pop up there about strain print. I'm not going to talk about what other people do, but what's unique about this is I take this, I scan it with my phone, right? And hopefully if you didn't see this, you're going to see it now, right? Like I scan this with my phone, and this is just a demo. Very simply, I go like this. And then it's got, it's loading, but it's got all that data around what it is, all the way down through, where you get into that. Now you're a consumer. You make a choice about downloading an app and putting your data on there. Efficacy, because listen, efficacy without consistency is about as useless as consistency without efficacy. Did I say the same thing, or okay, hopefully I reversed it. So the two things have to work together, right? And that's what the system does. And so the power of the value of that data is huge. So the construct, so when we talk about 18 cents, we looked at, the beautiful thing with 2020 and the COVID, we had a lot of time to do numbers, a lot of time to do a lot of numbers, like, right, Hanan? Pages and pages and pages of Excel worksheets, like 27 sheets inside one workbook to run numbers. And so that's how we got into 18 and how it goes. So it's all a relative thing. Yes, we own the attestations. 100% we own those attestations.
Okay, great. Thank you for that insight. So we have another question from Jeremy. Is GCAC's crypto going to list on Horizon FinTech's upstream exchange?
Well, I mean, I haven't talked about a crypto in any aspect anywhere in any of my press releases. I don't know what I would comment about that at this point.
Okay. And then this is another question about the green token. The Citizen, is there any update about the Citizen Green token? That's from Selena.
Once again, if I haven't announced anything, there's nothing for me to talk
about. And when will you be expecting to expand into the Florida market?
Florida's interesting. I love Florida. I love that angle in Florida. I think what we need to do is I want to be able to get in there and talk with regulators and legislators at different areas and to actually be able to turn around and say, look, either make it rec, do your own thing, or get serious about it. From talking with people, and once again, this is not my area of expertise, but that whole construct of, in the United States and the multiple payer insurer, and you're like, so how do you cover? Because we saw this in the Supreme Court of Ontario, a ruling about making Manulife cover somebody's cannabis prescription. Okay, so I make you do it as a legislator. I make you do it. Well, what happens when he falls down and is immobilized or can't work, and you just basically paid for somebody to have a seizure, and now they're off work. Now you have to cover their, like, wow, you know what I mean? Like, look at you guys in the United States, like the premiums, the co-pays on that. So I think there's more to come out of that. I think our system makes it very easy for people to get their heads wrapped around and say, hey, we do this for this reason, we cover here, here's the reasons why, right? And most importantly, we'll only work with cultivators that have this on their products.
Okay. And so we have, this is a question in regards to your test batch from Mike. With the test batch, are you running the complete test from seed growth, processing, shipping, etc.? And can you give an estimated time frame on a decision from them to upgrade a full rollout?
Yeah, who's he talking about? AgroCasa?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. So look, at the end of the day, it's the cultivator who uses the system and what they put in. Because I maybe Mike, to Mike's point, if when they start with it, so there's a whole bunch of series of processes that go all the way around. Will they use it for all 120 grams? I don't know. They're giving us 40 liters to work with. There's a lot of moving pieces around it. So I'll have to come back and update you further on it, Mike. Unfortunately, I believe that one of the key guys over there got COVID and he got locked in a hotel in Dubai for a few weeks. So hopefully he'll be back in the seat again and we'll start those conversations.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of the questions. There's a question from Bernard. Is anyone looking at the huge Australian medicinal market? Is that a potential that you might look at, or?
Yeah, well, we look everywhere. It's a good catch that you didn't see it on one of our go-to markets. Like, look, we're a small company,
Yeah.
and so unless we ingested a huge amount of capital, and grew to extraordinary sizes. And I, listen, if you told me 7 months ago that I would think that, a public offering at 19.5 cents was too cheap when we were at 2 cents, I would probably laughed at future Brad, right? I would have laughed. But now I'm all like, look, we've got enough on our plate to deal with it. Is it a good opportunity? We need to scale. We need to put people in there, and we need to cover those costs. It's a great question. It's also relative to, when you have a federally regulated program in Australia like you do in Canada, okay, there's certain nuances of the market that allow you entry points. So we found that one in Canada. I would like to see us play this out a little bit more in Canada with this non-possession selling license. Listen, I've told Hanan, I said, here's your lunch money. Go get me 1,000 Canadian medical cannabis consumers, right? And you know what we're going to do by the time we're done working with them and educating them, the only cultivators they're going to want to talk to are using our software. Is that a conflict? You bet. Too bad. They're our customers. We've educated them.
Oh, okay, great.
They don't want to put backs in their box.
Great answer. Thank you. So we have, we're pretty much done here. Gene Porter asked for the email address and also one quick question from him, which we'll send that to you on a follow-up email.
Yeah.
How are you different from Backbone?
From Backbone?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like asking me how I'm different from a lot of different things. And I say this, Dean, in all humility. Go dig up the patent and you'll actually see. Look, I've seen a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And I think it's all great. You know what I'm just happy about? That people are actually like, there's a human being that we're being asked to ingest something over here, and we're saying, put this in your body, and we actually care about what happens to them now. We're all in that same thing. Do we all have a slightly different approach? Yes. I think, this is where I think we're different. I think our focus on using the argument that where there's a lack of regulation, meaningful regulation that will grow the industry from 2% and 1%, 3% and 1%, 4% and 1%, that our process, that patent defines the ability to get there. So a regulator can say, hey, you know what? We can actually get in behind this and write a set of rules that are on behalf of the consumer, which is what government's supposed to do, right? And at the same time, not hamper the commercialization. Listen, if you're not changing your THC levels or your CBD levels, You got nothing to worry about. You should benefit from the trust built from your attestations on the blockchain. Grow your sales, decrease your compliance costs.
Great. Thank you so much, Bradley. All right. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, Alan, so we can wrap.
All right. Well,
Sarah.
thank you so much, Sarah. Excellent set of questions from the audience. Brad, Hannon, I want to thank you for a very, very informative conversation, discussion today. And there was a lot of interest in this webinar. I think we had a peak of 95 people at the peak, and right now there's still over 70 on the call. So a lot of questions. What we're going to do is we're going to send a follow-up letter that'll go out tomorrow to all the registrants. We had quite a few more who registered who weren't able to make it onto the call today, but everybody will get the follow-up letter. There'll be a video replay, and we're going to send that around a few times. So give people a chance to see it. There'll be a link to your email as well. So if they have questions about the offering, they'll be able to get in touch with you and with us, and let us know any questions that you have that weren't answered. And we'll have an active campaign to be in touch with people. So I'd like to thank the two of you for sponsoring this today, and it was really, really fascinating. And we look forward to, I want to say one thing more to the audience. We're in the process of writing a WallStreet Research profile on the company, and our senior analyst, Titus Benakowitz, has been doing the research for the last 10 days or so, and so he's making progress. So we hope within a week to be able to have that published. So so that'll be one of the next things to look for as well. So so without further ado, thanks everybody for joining, and thanks Brad, and thanks Hannon. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank you so much, Alan. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.